So, tell me, John didn't talk about his past.
No, he didn't. There were one or two bits that he would tell me about to reinforce the point that he was making. Now, in particular, one of the stories I remember so much, he thought, I don't know whether I've written this to you, that the two most democratic countries in the world were Denmark and Holland. Did I write you about that?
A little bit, but...
And the Tivoli Gardens, did I tell you?
So he was interested in democracy. You felt that he was a Democrat, fundamentally.
Oh, absolutely. He felt he was particularly hostile to class divisions. I don't know, democracy, that thing didn't come up, but the fact that what impressed him about the Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen, have you ever been there?
No.
Do you know what they are? It's a sort of great entertainment center, huge entertainment center, and in it are entertainments at every cultural level that you can think of. From top concert halls to country duty shows or whatever it is. And the Danes go there in droves at the weekend and so on. And he would stand outside there and at the entrance, and he would try to guess whether the people who were coming in were going to a classical concert or were going to a boxing fight or whatever it is. And he said you really couldn't tell from the appearance and the demeanor of the people, what kind of class they were. In England he was terribly struck by the class consciousness, not only in England, in so many countries, that the educated people are different from the uneducated crows, right? And that was what he particularly disliked. And he told me also that one of the things that impressed him in that same conversation, that in Denmark they make a special beer which is non-alcoholic for children, so that when the parents drink beer at home, the children are not said that you are not old enough to drink that, they would also be given beer. And he felt that was also the idea of bringing people together, not making distinctions between old and young and so on. And the way he talked about this, seemed to be terribly profound.
And the idea of bringing people together, that was his...
I suppose, of not having class or age distinctions. That is a kind of democracy. I don't think, probably was also a very good political democrat. I imagine, again, that was something, well, of course it would have been, because the UNESCO Youth Institute has also, part of its projects was about or the Free Institute, was to help Germany to recover from the Nazi period, but that was also to reduce tensions, because tensions, as you said, he was very interested into conflict. He was interested in conflict resolution, and conflict was often based, on these class distinctions or age distinctions. In the case of the Youth Institute, the distinction between the young and the older generation, he wanted to bridge all that. That's why he wanted the Youth Institute to work together with the Social Science Institute and the Education Institute. And because the professors who were in charge of the other two institutes, who were really professors, I think that may have been one of the things that they thought was a bit weird. Well, I really had to treat somebody like myself, for example, who was not a professor, who was a very young person at the time, as an equal, on the same standing as the directors of the other two institutes. So, you see, this was all, I think that, particularly in reflecting on all this now and afterwards, that was his idea, that to bridge differences and to, because the differences themselves create tensions and conflicts and so on.
Did you talk about Maria Montessori as well?
I don't remember. No, I don't remember. Why? Because he was interested in that.
Well, he was rather taken by Maria Montessori,
yes.
and then I think she died in about 52, and then he felt that, and he had just met her, he did meet her at some conference, I think it was at the UNESCO conference in Italy.
Yes.
And then he took her ideas as the sort of fund and felt that this would be the core ideas, certainly for the Education Institute, but more broadly. And he thought that her philosophy wasn't just for the preschool child, was really relevant for life altogether,
Yeah.
or as a sort of lifelong learning, I think.
Yes.
I think that was
Yeah.
no, he didn't mention Maria Montessori.
Well, not as far as I remember every conversation that we had. And mostly when we did talk, of course, it was about practical matters. So
He didn't recommend any books to read, or
I don't think so.
no. Have you met him a little bit in Paris and then in Munich, mostly?
Well, yes, I think he was he based in Paris at the time, actually working for UNESCO.
Okay, he had previously had this office in Stuttgart.
Ah, yes, that's where he had Miss Bob as
That's it, right. And did you ever come across Ursula Schmidt?
Yes, but I don't remember anything about her.
No?
But she was another of his secretaries, wasn't she?
Yes.
And I think, was she a friend of Miss Bob?
Could have been.
The name certainly rings a bell, but I cannot tell you anything more about her.
Okay. She was a British administrator who then continued working with UNESCO.
Yes.
It seems to have been rather kindly close to him. I don't know a great deal about her.
Yeah.
But, so, let's see. I was rather interested because several people have mentioned Miss Bob's name, and so I was rather interested in your characterization of her.
Yes.
And I wondered whether I'd never met her.
No.
I was rather interested, and it sounds very plausible that there were these two secretaries who were really, I can say, their allegiances were elsewhere.
My secretaries?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, and they didn't get on with each other. Which, and I was too young to handle conflict resolution between those two, for example. I was too young to have this job anyway, I think, or at least as too impetuous as was a good word.
Well, they must have, presumably meeting all these people, like, Horkheimer and Adorno and so on, that must have been...
But at the time I didn't know that Adorno was a famous man. I was not, I know quite a bit about him, but at the time, no, I didn't know. I knew that he was a professor and all that, but incidentally, would you like my work diary?
I would love to see it, yeah.
You can take it away with you, and it saves hands, and in due course you can get it back. Just switch it off to that.
Yeah, thank you. How did you find Elvin?
He was very nice, and he fully understood, I think, what an impossible position had been put into.
Yeah.
And he said, when my family resigned, I only resigned because I would have been not re-elected anyway, I wasn't prepared to wait for that, and my resignation speech is in there. He said, anything that I can do to help you when you get back to England, because I'd given up a job at the King's School Canterbury, and I didn't know when I could get back there. And he put me in touch with Leighton Park. He had some connection with the Quaker School at Leighton Park. And got me an interview there, but they didn't have a vacancy. So, but, you know, he really, I was very grateful to him because I was completely, you know, left stranded after this. And, you know, so he would be prepared to write some nice things about me, which...
Did you have a sense of what made Elvin, what Elvin was interested in?
No, I mean, I only met him a couple of times, but he, I think he was clued up about what was going on.
Okay. You felt he was fair?
Not only fair, but sympathetic, you know, which it's easy to be fair. But this is, no, sorry, that's not what I put it. But he was going to try and help me, which, and he's the only person, you know, in the whole of that setup who I felt was willing to do something. Okay.
Do you understand why they lied? I mean, in the end it went to this Pierre Moser. I mean, what did he have?
Nothing. Well, look, I can't. I wasn't there when he was being...
Because I can't see what he's...
He was he had hair on horse. He looked at so slightly... Well, of course I was prejudiced against him. But, no, there was somebody else who was in the line whom I didn't know, and whom I thought was rather would probably be the right person to appoint, but it's probably in there, but I can't remember. Okay. Do you know who else was standing?
No, as I say, those, at that level, the documentation is available.
Yeah. So the Pierre Moser you only know from me?
I know because there is then, then there's what he produced, and he produced a sort of small periodical series on youth and his various. He did try and develop this idea of a collaboration with social scientists.
Well, I was trying to do that too, but
so that's but I know.
When is the whole thing sold?
I don't know. Because the only one of the UNESCO institutes which has survived is the education one in Hamburg.
That's still going?
Yes, that's going. And that was the one which had a very, I would say, controversial beginning, because it was originally founded in Freiburg, and it was the
two of the American conservatives, because the two of the American conservatives like that.
They didn't like 3 in Catholic areas in Germany. That was why the Germans objected to it.
Yes.
So they wanted one definitely Protestant, although there was, in fact, one in the French zone, one in the American zone, and the Cologne one would have been in the British zone.
Yes.
So it was, from a zonal point of view, it was absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Because I can see from behind the scenes John Thompson with his religious sensibilities, with his, liking a sort of Catholic complex. He might have felt also under Adenauer to get state support for the whole enterprise.
He went to see Adenauer about the institute, and I went with him, and we were ushered into the antechamber. And then I was left in the antechamber, and he went in to see Adenauer, and I never got it. I said, what did he bring me all the way there for? Perhaps he even said, perhaps Adenauer will see you, and then Adenauer said, no, I just want to see you. I don't know.
Okay.
But, from the other side of the door. Yes.
It's, I can see it, because he would have been how old? He? No, you. 25 or 6 or...
I was, what year was it, 19?
51, 52,
52, 56, that was it. Good. Which one? Yes, 51. So then I was at 27.
27, okay. 27.
I mean, some, I know now that some people at 27 are more mature than others, and I think I was a bit immature for this job.
I can see it as very difficult. Did you, genuinely difficult? I mean, the sort of, I think they were rather brave actually to go to Germany and...
Well, at the time, yes, well, of course, of course, brave in the sense of physically brave wasn't the question. And I did feel that when I first crossed the border, it was the first time I'd been back to Germany since the end of the war, and crossed the border, and the railway police or whatever it is, that sort of very clipped. Well, that was best. But I think I said to you also, I never once felt an overt expression of anti-Semitism. Whether that was police politics, that they might have felt it but not said so. I thought there was money involved and all that kind of thing. I didn't come across that at all. Not even in sort of things that were passed back on to me, because there were people who were always ready to tell me what nasty things people were, what negative things people were saying, to some extent in order to unsettle me, and that worked. I mean, this meeting with Gimholt, which I wrote you about, that was absolutely shattering. But that wasn't the only thing, because Miss Keller, the other secretary, Miss Bock never did that, because Miss Bock was just too... but Miss Keller was in with the politics. Miss Bock was not, I don't think so. I think Miss Bock was not planted in order to report back on it. I don't think she was that. She was a spy, but Miss Keller, I subsequently discovered was, and everything I said was straight back to Gladys, whose mistress she'd been, and who was on the governing board. And she would hear things, and she would sort of pass these things on to me, very concerned, and I didn't have the maturity to say, well, I don't want to hear these things. Well, I did want to hear these things, because I didn't. There wasn't anything I could do about it. There was nothing I could do about the scheming that was part of my having been appointed in the first place. And
did you ever come across someone called Annedore Leber? Annedore Leber in Berlin. She was quite keen that the Youth Institute should have some sort of affiliation to Berlin, and was on the main German UNESCO committee. The reason why she was the widow of Julius Leber, who has been the Democrat in the Bomb plot.
Executed.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
And roughly at that time, her son got to know John Thompson, and they got to know each other rather well.
Yes.
They established very close, and he lived at Matthias and lived at Eau Vive.
Oh yes, there's something in your book, book like that over there, I remember now. Yes.
And you never heard about this curious place, Eau Vive?
Eau Vive, no.
Yeah.
No.
Or saw John's adopted son?
I didn't know about that. I mean, there's that's with eye-opener, all the things like that.
Subsequently, when I was in Paris, I was doing a lot of work on Eau Vive and trying to do a lot of work on it.
Did you meet his adopted son?
No, because he died rather early. His widow has been very generous, because there is a very large correspondence between John Thompson and the son. They were writing 2-3 times a day. it's not completely there. Some of it is even partially burnt, you can see, so that there are mostly about 150 letters. And the letters are partly about the day-to-day, what's going on in Eau Vive, and the rest is spiritual and philosophical.
Yes.
And it's as if, because Thompson never published next to nothing. One actually has got a very good outline of his ideas about the divisive and uniting character, and then how he extends that into, he gives it a psychiatric, psychological dimension, which is quite original, I think, at that point. I think he does what looks initially like a sort of a truism and rather simplistic, but once you're at the psychiatric side, it's a sort of psychiatry of, comes very close to Armine. I think you picked up on that.
Yes,
yes. So that was a very precious source. I think it's only with that the biography became really possible, because it gave him some depth that he would otherwise not have really had.
Yes.
Right, a chapter in something. Is there anything from your time at UNESCO in that book?
No, nothing at all.
Nothing carries through that you felt, oh yes, that's a sort of an insight?
No. I mean, this other book that I sent you a chapter from, which is The Fringe of Politics, unfortunately never got published. That I'm rather sad about, because I think that was an insight that gave a lot of insights into the youth movement, the student movement at the time. Which UNESCO is just one chapter, but as you know, I was involved in the National Union of Students. You didn't know?
Yes, I did. Yes. I knew that, but I don't know anything about your involvement.
I mean, I could lend you that too, but you've not been. I mean, it's nothing to do with some Thompson. But you know, the National Union of Students was affiliated to a body called the International Union of Students.
Yeah.
And the International Union of Students was dominated by the communists. And it was set up in just before the Iron Curtain really came down hard. And they used to meet all the IUS. I was International Vice President of the NUS. And they had an annual council meetings, the IUS, which used to alternate between Western and Eastern Europe, and then the French said, we won't let you meet here in London, and the British were, because they were so communist by that time. So the whole thing became, all their meetings were then in Eastern Europe. And as a result of that, I went to quite a number of these meetings in Eastern Europe, culminating in an absolutely fantastic, because we fought them, we fought the area. We didn't want to leave. Many people didn't want to leave because it was a bridge between East and West and so on. And I was one of the main people who said, they're just taking us for a ride, but they're exploiting us, and we must leave, because they only left the year after I stopped being involved. But in the year running up to that, we did try very hard to put the non-communist point of view at these meetings, and they didn't like to hear that. And there was a congress at Prague in 1950, which was a congress, not a council meeting. Council meeting was a relatively small thing, but congress was, huge hall, over 1,000 delegates. Right? And we made a statement there, and the whole hall broke into protest and shouting, and for a moment we really thought we were physically in danger. All that was the most exciting years of my life, and I had developed there a certain as a certain standing as a student leader. And that was how I came to be headhunted then, headhunted, the sacrificial.
Right.
The president of the NUS was a man called Stanley Jenkins.
Yeah.
And the speech that he made that brought this tremendous demonstration was actually written by me. But he as president read it.
Yeah.
And his name was then all over the place in the press about and so initially the UNESCO people approached him for the job, to be director. And he was by that time already in the Foreign Office. And he said, well, I can't do it. In any case, I have no languages except Welsh. English and Welsh. But they should try me, because I was trilingual. And I had all this experience in international student affairs, and I had a German background, and so on. And that's how they came to me, via this Prague speech.
Did you have any contact? That's very interesting. Did you have any contacts then with, say, when you were there, with student groups from Eastern Europe, or say Catholic groups from Eastern Europe, like Poland or something, or Czech?
No. I mean, the only contact we had, by the time we went to Eastern Europe, it would be too dangerous. The Catholic groups which were, against the regime or something like that. No, we didn't. We met the odd individual, but no. Were they allowed even?
Well, the church always had a degree of autonomy.
Yeah.
In I think all the Eastern European countries, but the autonomy was subject to control and harassment and so on.
And then, of course, these council meetings, they would last for, 4 or 5 days, and they were pretty intensive. So you hardly ever got out in the conference hall. And when you did, then there were things organized for you. A coach would be provided. I remember, for instance, in Bulgaria, we were in Sofia, and there was a day off or half a day off, and we were all bundled into coaches, and we were taken on a tour of the things that they wanted us to see in Bulgaria. Plotly, I remember, there was a sort of agricultural show, and the most interesting conversations one had were with members of the communist delegation who had some misgivings, because in the early days there were some people who said, well, communism is better than any of the other things we've got, especially in Eastern Europe. You can understand that, because the alternatives to that were right-wing peasant parties, that sort of thing. There wasn't really much in the way of social democracy. So there's a lot of people who joined the communists because they thought they were idealists, but because they were idealists, they also occasionally felt that they were having to compromise some of their decent principles. And one or two of them were prepared to confide that to me in private conversations. All of this is in my other book. So I had a very interesting life.
Telling me. I'm impressed. Helga Tim, is that someone you ever came across? No. She's from the Education Institute, but is apparently still going strong.
No, the other two institutes, I only met one, who ran the Hamburg one? What was his name? I think I met one of the heads, but not the other one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but you'll find that out.
They had Shocking in the Dutch one.
Yes, I met him.
Yeah. Who didn't do very well, Shocking. Oh, how did he? Was he okay when you met him?
I only met him once. But Because particularly in the first 2 or 3 months, I spent all my time traveling around seeing people to get their ideas of what they thought the institute ought to do.
How interesting. This is absolutely fascinating because this issue of the je me souviens, the Catholique, Jacques, was something that was very relevant to Eau Vive.
Really?
Yeah.
François Gachy was have you come across him? But he was one of my, after I had 2 assistants. Bowra was one whom you heard about, and the other one was a man called François Gachy, also in that book, in the thing. And he comes from the je me souviens. He came from an amiable, lanky, not very bright person.
It's interesting. I was so impressed. I wish I would have kept it.
Well, I'm an obsessional record keeper. I've written a daily diary since the age of 16. So
I think you're right, and I think, and then particularly when you come to such a situation like this, it shows the value of it, because you need to refer back in order to have a clear,
yes,
to have an accurate picture, rather than the official thing at a very high level.
Yeah.
And the Americans certainly, by Conan said, he wanted to close, 53 he wanted to close the Youth Institute.
And he would have had a report from an American called Pixley. That's also in the chapter I sent you.
Right.
Because Pixley was the one who actually was the hands-on man, and I know he turned against the whole. Well, he turned against me, and I think he thought the whole thing was a waste of money.
It was a very, it's an interesting setup because, I mean, politically UNESCO, I can see that what they wanted to do was to try and establish a broader constituency rather than just the member governments.
Yes.
And this Youth Institute would have been a way of affiliating the sort of non-governmental, what they would call broadly non-governmental organizations, but having a grassroots in. But later, or quite soon afterwards, they did a UNESCO schools project.
Yes.
Of designating certain schools as UNESCO schools, who would then have international exchanges. And
right.
That's quite a good idea, actually.
I mean, one of the things about the UNESCO Youth Institute, which I don't think UNESCO anticipated, is that all the student and youth movements thought it was a potential rival. You see, they particularly I know that the trade union youth people, that is Gimbald, the one who spilled the beans on that thing. And to some extent, Werner Franke, who was the student, what's it called, the German student movement, I've forgotten his name at the same time. And they were worried that the UNESCO Youth Institute would in some way be a rival to what they were trying to do, particularly the trade union movement. The student movement I don't think was quite so bothered. And Werner Franke was the only member of the council of the 14 the governing body, who consistently supported me. I know also that last vote, he was definitely on a supporter, because we both come from the student movement, and
I mean, it's important from that point of view to get, for that organisation to reach out, and in a way, it's never really done that successfully, and it's always still a member. I mean, it's very prey to power politics of the representative.
It's very what?
Prey to the power politics of the representative government, and it is which undermines its role
there
really.
is all this power politics inside UNESCO as well, apart from the fact that they were competing with non-UNESCO bodies, right? But inside UNESCO, I mean, it was so full of intrigue and jockeying for positions, and always has been, of course. And you know, when you now read about the European Union and the shenanigans that are going on there, and the deals, and I mean, of course, it has to be. If you're going to have organizations, you have to make compromises. But it's not my cup of tea.
No, I don't blame you, because in the end there is just an organisational politics for what really, but there are people who are very skilled with it, but there is very little substance behind them, but my God, they know how to elbow others aside really. And there was this generation of idealists, like Spencer and Auden, who had been in, sorry, not Auden, but Spencer and Julian Huxley, who were really pushed to one side by the power politics.
And then then the Cold War comes in, and that you know, it has other repercussions on degrees of cooperation and suspicion towards even social democrats at the time, you know, or the left wing of social democrats. So you know, it was really a minefield.
Did you ever go into the Russian zone?
No, not then.
Not then, but that was not part of your. I mean, there was absolutely no cooperative brief with the Russian zone.
Well, in the fringe of politics, there was an attempt by the East German student movement to not merge, to do something with the West German student movement. They could present, you know, we don't want our Vaterland to be divided and so on, and they had a meeting, the East Germans and the West Germans, about that, and I was there as observer. I think that was during the UNESCO. It must have been during the UNESCO. No, I was in Germany again in 19. It wasn't my first visit to Germany. Because I was there in 19. Yes, of course, I had the other experience, which I may not be in there. The American military government in 1949 wanted to know how the German student movements, whether they were becoming democratic or not. And they approached 3 national units of students, the Americans, the Swedes, and ourselves. And they said, could you set up a commission to visit the German universities and establish contact with the student movement and report back to us about how because fascism is still on some. There were 5 Swedes, 2 Americans, and 2 from the British National Union students, and I was one of those. That was in 1949. That was my first visit to Germany. And that was when crossing the German border, you know, I accepted it. So I had actually already been to Germany and been around the universities and met the students and met some of the rectors of the universities as well, which was also very interesting. So now how did I get started on that? Because that already gave me an extra qualification for this thing. And we wrote a report about that too.
It was just my question whether there was any expectation that there would be some collaborative effort.
It was during that visit to Germany that there happened to be this meeting between the East and the West German students, and I attended that. And the West Germans were absolutely determined to use that opportunity to lambast the East Germans. I mean, the East Germans were continually under attack. The leader of the West German delegation there struck me as very, very right-wing, to put it mildly. And of course they had reasons. They knew that their fellow students in the East were in prison, and some of these people were in prison and so on. But there was absolutely, I don't know why they even accepted having the meeting. I think it was simply to give the communists a dressing down. And it was a very, very uncomfortable situation. I mean, I was myself, of course, very anti-communist at this period, but even I felt, you know, if you have such a meeting, you don't have to be quite so abrasive as these people were. And the communists didn't braid back. You know, they looked very hang-dog and very sort of shamefaced and so on. So that was my only contact with East German students here.
So nobody ever said, oh, we hope that there will be something with the Russian zone? Or...
No, absolutely not, because I'm sure you know, that Adenauer, as a Catholic, was delighted with the division of Germany, you know, because it meant that the Catholics had a majority in West Germany, and if the two Germanys were coming together, that would all go. And I don't think Adenauer was in the least bit interested in reunification. You know, that has to wait until Brandt's really, you know, Brandt's period, this Ostpolitik and so on and so on. But and of course he was not CDU, but as long as the CDU was in charge, I think they were very happy with the American alliance. They were very quite happy with the Iron Curtain, and if there was going to be a reunification, it could only be, as it eventually did, of course, happen with the East Germans collapsing, but not in any, as a sort of partnership that you know, we negotiate this on equal terms. Absolutely not. And this meeting, the student meeting there, was, I think, a mirror of that.
Where was the meeting?
I have to look it up.
Oh, okay.
I think it was on a Bavarian lake place on one of the places.
Oh, okay, so it was in the West, probably.
It was in the West, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. But I'm not quite sure. I mean, that could look better.
Was that Bowra's time?
Yes.
Right. Who was clearly quite internationally minded.
Bowra was?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. But, I mean, he was so knowledgeable about international literature. You know, he read Russian and French and Greek, and you know, that was where his cosmopolitanism came from. I didn't know about it. He was also politically, but that follows, you know, that he meets Russian and French also, and so on.
I don't understand Bowra. He's one of these Oxford cult figures.
Yes.
Who is legendary.
Yes.
And he has never understood what the basis is.
Well, he was a brilliant controversialist, brilliant conversationalist, sorry, I mean.
Yeah.
I've got a biography of him. Have you come across it?
I know that Leslie Mitchell is doing something at the moment.
Is he?
Yes.
You know Leslie Mitchell?
I don't know his well, no, I was an undergraduate and heard him lecture occasionally, but was he a contemporary? No, he was younger than you, Leslie.
Yes, when I was a schoolmaster,
yeah.
I've several times heard him lecture through school.
Oh, right.
And he's such an entertaining man. And he's just written a book about the Whigs, hasn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Which was very well reviewed.
Well, it's certainly good.
He's a bit of a Whig himself, I think.
Yes. I never quite understood. And it's a little bit of a mystery. What he perhaps wouldn't have been there at your time. The people in fact, yesterday I wrote a letter to someone called de Grun, Dominique de Grun.
No.
No, that rings no bell. Okay.
So there, this is writing.
Oh, see, their memories. Because what I tried to do was to try and work out why John Thompson's son ended up at Wadham, because after all, he got to be admitted by the college.
Yes.
And he was had such an untypical background, this son.
Yes, but I don't think Bowra had much to do with admissions. You know, there was an admissions tutor, and well, how did he get? Was he a scholar or a commoner or what?
He was a commoner.
A commoner. I mean, you see, Bowra, pre-war Bowra was very different from post-war Bowra, because pre-war Bowra already had one entertained on the most lavish scale. I mean, he entertained distinguished people, but he also entertained undergraduates, and there was he knew every undergraduate because he had them to dinner.
Yeah.
Then immediately after the war there was rationing, and he couldn't do it any longer. And I only met Bowra face to face, I think twice in the 4 years that I was at university.
Okay.
And you know, at that time they always said, oh, you know, you should have been here before the war, you know, and then you would have seen Bowra in his...
Oh, I see.
So he, in a sense, he almost shrank after the war. And not much entertainment, of course not much entertainment. I don't know when did rationing end. I mean, it was quite several years after the war.
It would have been 53 or 54, because even I still have a ration book.
That's right. And when did he retire from...
Oh, that I don't know.
Yeah, but it can't have been, it must have been around that time.
You think he was already then? Because I had a history, my history tutor at Wadham College, the youngest of the three tutors was Philip Waller. I think was a Bowra, was sort of at the very tail end of Bowra.
Oh, so that's later.
Yes, it would have just come under...
Well, I mean,
but he stretched into the 60s.
Oh yes, well maybe. I mean, you know, after I went down, of course, but...
I see, you only met him twice, and in those days the colleges would have been smaller and...
Yes. Well, when I say twice, yes, that's right. I think he could, there was a tutor's report which went to him each time. I think it was on those two occasions that he just said, we're on. Very brief.
Oh, I see. It was just really the formal collections. You weren't even invited to them.
No.
Anything.
I mean, all my contacts with Pat Thompson, Bill Deakin, does that name mean anything to you?
Yes, certainly.
Yes. He was one of my tutors.
Because he then became the
Anthony.
Anthony.
Yes.
And there was this money coming in from Antoine Best.
Yes, that's right.
But that would have been after your time?
Yes, that's right.
But it would have been at the time when John Thompson's son was there.
All right.
But he was there 53
And that was one of my little disappointments, because, you know, before I finally settled very happily to schoolmastering, I had hoped to be a don at Oxford. And that thought with Bill Deakin at St. Anthony's, you know, he would, but it didn't work out. But it's such a blessing, you know, in disguise, because I've been so happy as a schoolmaster, and I'm not naturally a research worker.